I was fortunate enough to check out a preview event of Nightingale, a survival open world game by Inflexion Games, which is coming out on February 20th in early access. And a lot of people have been waiting for this survival game, and they're wondering, well, how is it? Well, to make something very clear before we are jumping into here, this is not a review. This is just a preview, giving you my first thoughts, giving you my first ideas on what to expect from this game. And then the closer we are getting to the actual early access, I will have more content here on the channel, so make sure to subscribe. With that said, let's jump right into it. What to expect? Well, first of all, I can already say the game looks absolutely gorgeous. It's one of the prettiest games out there, that's for sure, especially the forest area I was in. Beautiful. It runs pretty well. I had some FPS drops here and there, which, well, probably has to do with the preview build. Plus, I need a new CPU. It's a bit old. It's a bottleneck at this point in my PC, but it runs pretty well most of the time. It looks just pretty. And the world design, even though the maps you're on are completely randomly generated, it just looks so pretty and it makes sense, right? Like from a technical aspects, I didn't have any crashes. I didn't find any bugs or weird moments where I just thought, oh, wow, that's not right. They have to fix that. Like it never happened in the 3 days I was able to play the game. And my first impression of the game is it's great, but don't make the mistake and play this game on hard right at the beginning, or at least not if you don't want to sit there for hours and hours. Like when you are starting the game out at hard, you can switch later, by the way, in the game, it becomes Dark Souls. It literally becomes Dark Souls, which is great, not so much for content creation when you only have 3 days to actually finish the game. And I think if you play on hard, you want to have some friends with you. If you're playing alone, hard makes it so that some of the boss fight mechanics you will meet makes it super tough to evade them, and you will always get damaged. And at some point, I was just chucking my healing potions because I couldn't evade the attack, and the boss was doing this attack over and over and over. It was like it was trapped in this attack animation, and that was the whole boss fight. It was a little bit weird, but my point is, maybe if you're starting out on this game, you want to start on normal. Because one of the main focus aspects of this game is that there is a gear score, like in an MMO or like in Destiny, right? Where your character has a gear score, the enemy has a gear score, and then there's also skill on top of that. You have to show that you can evade certain attacks, yada yada, the whole shebang, right? It's a video game, duh. But the really interesting part here is what Nightingale is focusing on. Nightingale, even though it's an open world survival game, focuses also pretty much on some MMO elements. There are tons of points of interests on the map where you can just go to and you will find a dungeon. You will find like boss enemies, or you have to defend a certain position. You have to do a riddle. Like there's so many different things you can do on the map. It's sometimes a bit overwhelming and you think, oh gosh, where do I go next? Till you then realize there is no end to this, because you can just create new maps over and over and over, and they're all randomly generated with new points of interest, right? Those are the so-called realm cards you will unlock in the game. And then you're opening up a portal like in Stargate. You also have to defeat the enemies coming out of the portal before you can go through. And then you are landing on a new map with a new biome, with new difficulties, and with new resources you have to find to push further into the game. But as I said, if you want to go, let's say, into a dungeon, the dungeon is like, hey, wait a minute, before you get in here, what's your gear score? 20? Yeah, no, bro, you're not getting in here. You need at least gear score 25. Come back when you have that, right? So they do actually those type of MMO segments. Later on, there will also be like a hub where all the people can meet, and then they can go into dungeon if they so desire. You don't have to go into this hub, not at all. You can have your own base very early on, and then you can just build your own home. People can visit your home, and so on and so forth. So if you don't want to do this whole hub thing, you never have to, right? Speaking of building, I didn't put too much time into building because it took a lot of resources, but it seemed to be a-okay. Like the building very much reminded me of a lot of other survival games, and especially for the ones which are using Unreal Engine, felt pretty much okay. The one thing And this is a warning for everyone out there. Beware the trees. Yes, the trees are very functioning like in Valheim. And if you know what that means, I'm sorry for you. If you don't know what that means, well, do I have a surprise for you. But yeah, the building feels pretty cool. I enjoyed it. Speaking about the environment and the environment being a dig, again, hello to the trees. The environment is actually really interesting because the environment is not just there. So in the forest area I'm in here, which you see in the video, it can start to rain. And that means you're getting drenched, you're getting wet. Duh. But that also means you will move slower. You will not regenerate stamina as much. Or the rain transform into hail, and the hail will actually hurt you when you are staying out too long. So you have to protect yourself by hiding somewhere where you're not getting hit by the hail. Or you have an umbrella with you, yes, an umbrella, and which will protect you, let's say, from the sun in the desert or from the rain in the forest area. But not only that, the umbrella is also functioning as a parachute, right? When you're jumping off a cliff, you can basically pull out the umbrella before you're hitting the ground and you will not get any fall damage, and you can glide a little bit around, which is also pretty cool. Like, in general, the environment feels really good to traverse because there's also a lot of resources and a lot of stuff going around. And all in all, the game feels really smooth. The fighting feels good. The animations look great. The sound design is so good. There's so many things to discover. Like, I got definitely eaten up by the game when it comes to explore the world and get a feeling for it. What are the things I do not like about this game? Well, there are a few things which are thankfully are already getting fixed by the team. Like one of the examples is when you're putting your items into a box in your base, you have to go to the box to take the item out to use it for crafting, instead of just having the box being connected to your workbenches. They are already working on adding that when early access is coming out, so no problems there, right? But there were a few things which I would also love them to take a look at. Crafting in particular. I think the crafting in Nightingale is really cool. It's similar to what you see in other survival games, but Nightingale has so many crafting tools that it becomes overwhelming and overly complicated. Let me just give you an example of what I mean also sometimes. Let's say I build a workbench, put down the workbench, and now I can craft some items there. Then I realize, oh, wait a minute, I need to unlock more blueprints. What do I need? Oh, I can build an upgrade for the workbench, a sawhorse, and that sawhorse will unlock more blueprints. Except it doesn't. It only allows you to use the unlocked blueprints. And that is a very important distinction, because that means even though I put down the sawhorse, I cannot just craft the items. I still have to find the blueprints to actually craft them. And that feels a bit like overly convoluted. Like, just let me just build the sawhorse and then build the upgrades. Or if you don't want that, like, just let me find the blueprints and I don't have to build another sawhorse or another thing. Like, the problem is that this is something I realized later on. I had so many upgrades I have to put next to all the workbenches I'm utilizing in my base. And my base was just full of workbenches and upgrades for the workbench. And I couldn't build a single new thing because I didn't have the blueprints, right? So that was like, oh, that's a bit much. I'm hoping they're going through that again. Also, material farming. I sometimes felt like you have to farm a lot of materials to make something. And I feel like they could lower that maybe a little bit. But that's such a small thing I'm complaining about, right? If you're listening to this, you think, wow, those are your biggest complaints about this game? Strangely enough, yes. Like, I'm complaining on a very high level here, right? Like, those are all things which are fixable if the developers so desire and if the community are in the same mindset as I am, right? It doesn't mean that I'm right. But that's really all I have to complain about this game. Like, it was just such a joy to explore the world, use the crafting, build your base. The combat feels really good. Like, it's snappy, it's not floating, and I didn't even had a chance much to use a lot of range weapons. Like, keep in mind, this game has a lot of range weapons and even magic in it. And so I was mostly only using my melee weapons, and I had like a slingshot, right, for range, and it already felt pretty good. So, all in all, I definitely had fun 3 days into Nightingale. I definitely have to see more of the game. I have to see more of the mid game and I have to see more of the end game, of course. But my first impression was very positive, especially for an early access game, especially for a survival game where in the past we had some very questionable releases. This game seems to shape up for a quality early access release. With that said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the first impression. If you still have any questions regarding Nightingale, we'll try to answer them down below in the comments. Just ask, and then we'll try to answer them if I can. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.